Welcome into episode 269 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Actually, I shouldn't just gloss over that. Bridget's been gone the last couple of episodes, broadcasting all around college hockey and beyond. Bridget, welcome back. How was your week?
Busy, very busy, and my voice still hasn't really recovered, but it was fun. And I have another broadcast Saturday, so
Yeah, and for those who weren't listening prior or weren't informed, Bridget was part of the an inaugural all female broadcast and production team during the Beanpot final, women's Beanpot final at the TD Garden, which is just a really, I'm not going to speak too much on it because Bridget, you were a part of it, but just a really cool moment for all of you involved.
yeah, we got some good feedback afterwards too, which was nice. Like sometimes we go, like at least for myself, like I go through it and I'm just like in the zone and I have no idea what it looks like or sounds like to other people. I'm just trying to like do the play-by-play the right way, and then I'll go back after and watch it and see like, oh, okay, yeah, that came out good. And it actually, we had the Bruins producer and like we had all the Bruins cameramen and we had just a full like a huge production, and it did come out looking pretty nice. So I was happy about that and some of the stuff I've heard people say about it since then.
And it was a great event. Over 10,000 tickets sold for the first women's Beanpot final at the Garden, which was the highest attendance for a women's college hockey game in New England. And I think the highest other than like anywhere in college hockey other than at Wisconsin, which always draws the biggest crowds.
Yeah, Wisconsin.
Unfortunately, and my Terriers fell in overtime, but still a cool event nonetheless.
Bridget, before we get to our opening shifts, how was it? What was it like calling play-by-play from that high up at the Garden? I think that's the furthest elevated you've been while calling a game. Were there certain challenges that you weren't expecting being that high up, or just how was the overall experience? It's not every day anybody gets to play-by-play for a game in an NHL arena.
I actually had a harder time at Harvard. I had a much harder time at Harvard because that was where the semifinal round was, and I had to do it from behind the net, and that was really weird. And I had to figure out how to use my monitors and like my other camera angles to kind of like see into the corners that I couldn't see into on the opposite side. And I have good vision, but we had we were blocked by like the netting, and like it was like perfectly at eye level. It was awful. I had such a hard time seeing there. And then when I got to TD Garden, luckily I'm there so often with Scott that I already knew that my eyes were probably going to be okay with it because I can see, all the Bruins players fine. So it actually was pretty easy. I had an easy time with it just because it was a clean, nice line of sight. I could see both sides of the ice fine. And once I was like about like 4 or 5 minutes into it, I was like, okay, no, this is going to be fine. I'm not going to have an issue. But yeah, it's not like Lowell. Like Lowell, I'm nice and like up on top of like very close. And then, but it's cool doing a broadcast on an NHL rink for the first time. And, I would love to go do an NHL game there at some point, but it's a good, nice step here. And definitely like checks off a bucket list thing, like do a broadcast at TD Garden. So
yeah, hopefully we hear you calling a Bruins game soon. That would be the ultimate showdown.
Just get me in there. Sophia said she'd try to pull some strings.
Nice.
And by the way, she's like the nicest person ever. She's like borderline too nice. Like I don't even know how she pulls it off.
Those Canadians.
I know. That's it. That's exactly what it is.
Were you in the same booth that Jack and Brick always
Yeah.
use? I assume. Yeah. So you can see like Jack's bags of coins that won't get tossed and all that stuff.
And cans of corn that were stacked up.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So let's get right into the opening shifts. The Bruins had an exciting overtime win over the Senators last night in Ottawa. Brad Marchand stays hot. So does Trent Frederic. Let's jump right into the opening shifts.
Yeah, so my opening shift is about Brad Marchand and that overtime winner, which came on a nice 2-on-1, just beat Eunice Corpusalo with a snapshot. And it was his 396th career goal, which moved him one ahead of Ray Bourque for 5th on the Bruins all-time goals list. He's only 6 behind Rick Middleton, so he'll be up in 4th soon. And if you look at it, like he could catch Bergeron next year, possibly, maybe Esposito the year after. He's almost certainly gonna end up top 2 or 3 because eventually Pasternak will join him as well. But also, this was Marchand's 24th goal of the season. He had 21 all of last year. He's on pace for 40 goals, actually 41 to be exact. His career high is 39. He's never had a 40-goal season, and he's doing this at age 35 and in his first season without Bergeron as his regular center. It's really impressive, and I didn't, going back, like I didn't even think Marchand got off to the best start this year. It took a while for him to develop chemistry with really any of the other centers, which is natural. You played 12 years with Bergeron. It's not going to be the easiest transition to someone else. But he has chemistry with Coyle right now for sure, whether it's Pasternak on their right, which is what it's been the most recently, or Frederic getting bumped up, or DeBrusk at one point. Those two in particular are clicking. Marchand had both goals in the comeback against Carolina on Wednesday in the third period. A game the Bruins eventually lost, but they came back from 2-0 down to tie it in the third. So he's been on fire, up to 5 goals in the last 4 games. And it's just, I remember we had talked before the season, and one of my big questions for this Bruins team was like, is Marchand just going to continue to be good, or is he going to get back to being elite now a full year removed from that double hip surgery? Well, he's looking pretty damn elite right now. Like it's a great season that he's putting together. So that's my opening shift.
And mine is yours.
Bridget, you want to go next?
Yeah, yours is a positive one. Mine, not so much, just because we got late news that Weatherspoon was going to be in for Shattenkirk in the game against Ottawa. And Shattenkirk has been scratched a few times recently. So, now that Forbert is back, Shattenkirk has been kind of right on the borderline of the top 6 defensemen. And it looks like Weatherspoon is getting the nod instead of him. We'll get to this more in depth later, but he seems to maybe be now considered the 7th defenseman, but he's right on that borderline of the 6th or 7th defenseman now. So for him, he's got to find a way to make his way back into the lineup, but we can get into our thoughts on the defense later, but just wanted to point that out that Shattenkirk has been scratched quite a few times. And it coincides with people getting healthy on defense. So, and that's without Lohrei up. Like Lohrei has already been sent down to Providence over a week ago. So, things not looking good for Shattenkirk currently, though. I still think he's a good defenseman. He just finds himself pushed down the depth chart.
Well, I wonder if he might be dealing with something, because Montgomery had said pregame that they had a couple of guys dealing with something. They had to see how they felt in warmups, and Lauko ended up as a scratch up front. And he's been playing great recently, so I'm assuming he was one of the guys dealing with something. Doesn't seem to be too serious, but I wonder if it was Shattenkirk on defense, because I was a little surprised that Forbert played both nights of a back-to-back, just coming back from his groin injury, and he only played, I think, 11 minutes, and they barely even used him on the penalty kill, which is obviously usually a strength, or I guess they ended up at 13, but they barely used Forbert on the penalty kill, which is obviously usually a strength. So there was clearly some minutes management going on there, and I wonder if the original plan might have been Forbert being scratched, but I don't think Montgomery was asked about that after the game, at least from anything I saw. So I guess we don't really know, but yeah, there is definitely some sort of rotation going on there.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was just a little bit banged up, just based on him having to play a lot during the time that Forbert was out and Carlo was out for a chunk there. So, yeah.
For me, my opening shift is it's regarding Trent Frederic, and I also think it kind of can spawn into a more subjective discussion about the Bruins 7th Player Award winner at the end of the season, which goes to basically the player that goes above and beyond expectations. Now, this Bruins team, I think, has a lot of potential candidates. There's a lot of good stories on this team this year. If you want to talk about, and again, if these players I'm about to mention continue to have a good second half, right, or even better than their first half, but like most people didn't really know who Matt Poitras was, let alone think he was going to make the team as a 19-year-old and contribute. Danton Heinen signs a PTO. And then signs a contract after the regular season begins. He's a middle six contributor for this team. James Van Riemsdyk is tied. I want to say he's tied for he is 5th on the team in scoring. He was a bargain free agency signing with some mileage under him, and he's had a good season. Charlie Coyle, people will sit there and say, potentially, well, how can your top center be a 7th Player Award candidate? Well, when he was a historic 3rd-line center in the league, that's impressive. But for me, and Morgan Geekie's another one, like just steadily, he's another good contributor. There's a lot of good stories. That said, Trent Frederic, he comes to the front of my mind, and I'm not alone. And I posed this question to people on Twitter yesterday about like halfway through the year where they think this award should go to, and there were a lot of people saying the names I just said, but the most one that was mentioned was Trent Frederic, and I actually agree. And my question for you guys is, for my opening shift, is has his ceiling in your mind changed as an NHL player? I know earlier this year we talked about maybe after last year he could be certainly a 3rd liner in the NHL, but Scott mentioned how he's already kind of playing a 2nd line role because this team is just kind of balanced. But he's starting to seem like a player that has legitimate top 6 forward potential in this league year in and year out in a power forward role. And there's numbers to back up what he's done this year. But I want to get your guys' opinion before I throw those out. But just your thoughts on Trent Frederic and how has his ceiling changed as a player in your mind right in front of your eyes this year?
Yeah, he just keeps pushing it higher. I mean, he's getting consistently better every year. And, last year he is a breakout season where he ends up with 17 goals. He already has 14 this year, and there's still a game to go before the All-Star break. He has 14 assists, and he already tied his career high. I mean, he's on pace for 24 goals and 48 points. Like, to your point, that's a legit middle six production. Like, now we're not just talking about 3rd line production. You're talking about middle six. You're talking about a guy who has driven the 3rd line when he plays there, and also helps the 1st or 2nd line when he gets bumped up, like he did in the 3rd period against Carolina. He gets bumped up with Coyle and Marchand and sets up both of Marchand's goals. So he's moving around. He can play either wing. He can play center. And yeah, like you see that and you're like, oh, okay, so I guess now he's a mid 20 goals, around 50 points guy. And it's like, well, what if he keeps pushing up from that? Like, what he's that this year? What if next year he's 30 goals, 60 points? Like, I don't think you can really rule anything out for him right now because he's on that steady incline where he clearly hasn't topped out yet.
I think what's cool about how he's done it too is just that he's done it from every single position you could possibly put in. He's been able to handle, and it shows you I would say he's probably the most versatile player on the team in terms of, you tell him, okay, you're playing center tonight, you're playing wing tonight. Like, Zacha is probably up there too, but Zacha doesn't fight, and Zacha is not going to play 4th line minutes. Like, Frederic has played on pretty much every line this year, and he seemed to work well with everyone. And that's not something that we were saying 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I mean, there not that long ago when we first started the podcast, his situation was like we weren't sure he was going to make the Bruins out of camp. And now you're looking at him and you're like, okay, well, he's clearly found his confidence in the NHL. He's found a way to impact the games in all sorts of different ways. Hey, who knows? He might start seeing more power play time now. We've seen him do that a little bit. So I just think it's cool how he's done it because he's such a good team player. All the guys like him and are very happy to see the numbers that he's putting up and kind of all believed in him this whole time because they knew more, before we did kind of what he's like and what he could do. So it's nice to see him get that reward with the goals and see his production step up, and you wonder what his role might be next year because we've been talking about, the Bruins need to add a top 6 winger. Maybe at some point in the future, we're not seeing something like that with Frederic around. Like maybe at some point in the future, we're like, well, no, like just put Frederic there.
Yeah, and Scott, you mentioned it last night online. 15 points in his last 17 games, 7 goals, 8 assists, and not only does that speak to consistency, but I think, like when you mentioned what his season-ending projections, I kind of take that with a grain of salt because I feel like once you kind of get going in this league, you really get going, and like his confidence is there now. He knows he can do it. And I'm not saying that confidence wasn't totally there earlier in the year. I just think there's a difference between Trent Frederic on the ice right now than there was in October, November. And I think he's been playing great all year. But from a scoring perspective, once you start scoring, it's, I think that bar elevates for you. So I could see him just continuing to maybe not score on a, 15-point, 17 game pace, but like I think he could probably, I think he can keep climbing is my point. And what's awesome to see is the way he's scoring goals. Like he's scoring goal scorers goals. Like that goal he scored against Detroit maybe about a month ago when he challenged Ben Sherratt to a fight right afterwards was an amazing backhand goal. And he kind of like, I feel like that goal is like kind of has like propelled him. But last night against Ottawa, receives a pass at the blue line, takes 2 steps in, snaps one top shelf. Like that's a goal scorer's goal. Not a lot of guys in the NHL, can score on a shot like that from that far out and beat a goalie clean. That's impressive. It's what's shots like that is what separates David Pastrnak from
I was
like
gonna
other.
say,
Well,
Pasta's
there's a million things that separate him, but
like that's the kind of goal Pasta scores, and not the kind of goal Trent Frederic was scoring earlier in his career.
By the way, speaking of a Frederic Pastrnak comparison, they are tied in 5-on-5 points per 60 minutes. Only Charlie Coyle's more on the Bruins. I looked this up last night. There's 317 forwards in the NHL who have played 400 5-on-5 minutes this season. Trent Frederic is 40th in points per 60 minutes. Like, if you just think about that from a league with 32 teams, for him to be 40th in 5-on-5 scoring, like it's just a testament to how good he's been. Because again, Bridget mentioned the power play. Like on the season, he still has gotten very little power play time overall. Like just about all of his damage comes 5-on-5. And yeah, like that shot, like that's someone who's just feeling confident. And like you mentioned about how you can just get on a roll. Like, yeah, he's attacking, he's going middle, he's taking his shots, he's picking spots like that. I mean, that was just the goal scorer's goal. That's, it's a great shot. Like he uses the defenseman as a little bit of a screen and just snaps it top corner. I think it was a little bit posting in. Like,
yeah, it's not just it's not even just the shooting, right? It's the skating with the puck on his stick, making plays. It's his passing. Everything has just, I mean, and again, it hasn't been an overnight switch that flipped, right? Like he had a good year last year. Okay, like let's not act, not that you guys are, but I don't want to act like I didn't think the player was already on an upward trajectory. He was, but he's making a significant difference this year. Where I look at him in the past, and I saw a player. I look at him now, the way he's been playing, and I see a difference maker. His size and his ability to control the puck and protect the puck and make plays and use his long stride. Now that he's putting it all together, dare I say, it's like he's a first round talent, right? So it's like you're seeing that come to fruition now, and not every first round talent is an NHL all-star, but yeah. So kudos to him, absolutely.
And not every first line talent that gets put in a fourth line role for several seasons finds a way to get out of it when that's not the game that they're used to playing. Like, he was able to carve himself out a completely different role, and then build on all of those other things we were talking about that make him a difference maker now. Like, he was able to solidify a spot in the lineup by being tough and by grinding it out and just being defensively sound. And then he started adding and showing the other things that he could do. And it's not always easy to climb your way out from, I'm a tough guy grinder, fourth liner, to, okay, now I'm, third line center when I started as a wing. And now, like, maybe you can throw me in the top six. And he's done it just like piece by piece, putting the work in and sticking with it.
It's crazy that he was a healthy scratch on opening night just last season. And if you remember, at the end, he was a healthy scratch in 2 playoff games too. Like, once guys came back into the lineup, Bergeron and Krejci, and obviously they had added guys with Bertuzzi and Hathaway. Like, he got shuffled out, and it's like, obviously that's not going to happen now. It's like he's such a fixture in their middle six now. It's crazy to think that just last year, just not even 12 months ago, he was still getting scratched at times. Like, that's, and I remember wondering at the time, like, would that, going into a contract negotiation, like, would that have soured any feelings? And it didn't. He made it clear he wanted to stay, and they get close to arbitration, but end up getting a deal done before they got there. And that deal looks like a steal now. 2 years, $2.3 million a year. Like, not only great value this year, but next year as well.
Yeah, I mean, there was a play last year where it kind of like woke him up, like, in general. It was against the Rangers at Madison Square Garden, and I forget who it was, but somebody on the Rangers stepped up and, greenlit open ice hit Frederic, and it kind of started like a bit of a melee. He ended up fighting Barclay Goodrow. And I feel like that moment just kind of like woke him up. And then it's ever since then, it's been, gradual. And I didn't love him getting scratched last year in the playoffs. I didn't.
No.
But, definitely not going to happen anymore. And you mentioned the power play. I think power play time is the next thing on the horizon for him. Like, with his size and his shot, I could see him being an effective player in the bumper too, or at least net front. Something to consider going forward. But
he had a net front goal on the power play one time. Like, one of the very few times he played on the power play, he had that net front goal.
Yeah, no, that was a nice move. Like, showed good hands.
Yeah, and he had that goal against Sorry, Scott, go ahead. We're glitching.
No, I was just saying that power play goal was a nice move. Yeah, I don't know. My internet's been a little in and out, so.
Okay, it's not me though, I don't think. So did you want to move on to?
It's probably a combination.
Okay, Scott, you want to go to your opening shift about Marchand? Scotty?
Scotty doesn't know.
No,
Scotty doesn't know.
Scotty's trying to fix his
Wi-Fi. Yeah, I guess my internet's like really in and out right now. So if you guys want to talk, hopefully mine comes back here.
Okay. All right, I'll start because my internet seems to be fine. I want to go to Scott's opening shift because talking about Brad Marchand and the impact he's been able to have, and he scores another overtime game winner in Ottawa. I don't know if you guys thought that game seemed like it was, it seemed like it was destined for overtime. I feel like that should have been a regulation win, even though the Bruins were up not just the Senators, they were up against the refs once again. Well, we can get to either part of that first, Brian. I know, like, we talked right before we got on here about how the refs were kind of a main storyline again, and it shouldn't be like that. So the Bruins end up giving up
Mm.
2 power play goals, and it's not, it's hard to fight against that. The first 3 power plays that the Senators had, they didn't get a single shot off on any of them. But then when you give them 6 chances, like, they're going to start getting shots and they're going to start putting them in. So, what are you guys' thoughts on how regulation went? And then we can go to the overtime goal by Marchand.
Well, I mean, I hate talking about the officiating because it's just wasted energy and it shouldn't be something we talk about. But I couldn't help but bring it up to you guys this morning because it's like anytime that one team has 6 power plays and the other team has 1, it's like it's clearly it's just a inability to do your job effectively. And to your point, Bridget, it's like the Bruins are playing shorthanded all game, playing against the Senators and the refs. And I'm not somebody who likes to bring officials into the play because I think they suck for every team. But after a night like last night, it's like in a league where you call somebody for breathing on somebody, like you're gonna call the Bruins 6 times, but you mean to tell me that the Senators haven't done a little love tap to the gloves to call them as well? It pisses me off when you look at any NHL game. I don't care if it's the Bruins who are the recipients of the good calls. Any NHL box score where one team has 1 power play and the other team has 2, 3, 4 times the amount, 5 times the amount, 6 times the amount. It is unacceptable. It should never happen. That's all I can really say. It's pathetic.
Can I ask you guys a question? Is embellishment still a penalty in the NHL?
I'm gonna go with no.
Are they supposed to call that? Because I remember a time when the NHL started cracking down on embellishment, and I think it might be time to do that again because I'm not just talking about Bruins games, but other games I watch. Like, there are a lot of embellishments, and I can't remember the last time I saw it called. Like, it's crazy, and the reason I bring it up now is because the Senators, both of their power play goals came when they got power plays because Parker Kelly flopped. He flops to the ice battling with Trent Frederic behind the net. He flops to the ice getting shoved by Parker Wotherspoon it gets called a cross check, but like that push happens in every scrum in the corner all game long.
And it was
just usually
elbow.
Players have more shame than to drop to the ice like a ton of bricks like Parker Kelly did. But like that's embarrassing for the refs to fall for that. To fall for it twice from the same guy. It's like, what are you guys doing? Like, what are you watching? Like these are NHL players that lift weights and train and have the best strength and conditioning workouts in the world. They're strong enough to stay on their feet when someone nudges them in the back. Trust me, they are strong enough to stay on their feet. So when you see a guy just drop like that, like put 2 and 2 together and realize he's trying to get a call and you fell for it. You idiots. Like it's insane. It's just unbelievable.
It is insane. And you got 60 minutes in a hockey game to allot 12 of those to a team to have a man advantage and then give the other team 2. And first of all,
it was 1. Wasn't it just 1?
No,
Yeah.
I mean 2 minutes of power play time.
Yeah.
Which ended up actually only being 3 seconds because
Yep.
just blasted a one-timer.
Yeah, it was 3 whole seconds.
Exactly. Right. Okay, fair enough. Right. So it's like, how as an official, how can you do you think they're walking out of Scotiabank Arena last night being like, yeah, we crushed that game, boys. Good job. Like what are you doing? Seriously, even if the Bruins deserved all those penalties, which they didn't, it's like you mean to tell me that the Senators played a completely clean game, especially when everything gets called these days? It's like, come on, guys. Like, this goes beyond the Boston Bruins versus the Ottawa Senators on January 25th. Like, this is a league-wide issue, and they gotta figure it out. They're ruining the games. They're ruining the game.
Yeah, it's hard to watch, especially the embellishment stuff. Like, that's not hockey. Embellishment is soccer or basketball. Like, that's not hockey. It shouldn't be. And when you say when's the last time you remember someone getting called for embellishment, the last time I saw an embellishment call was in a college hockey game. I can't remember the last time I saw one in the NHL.
Bridget, I'm going to tell you this as someone who also watches a lot of soccer. soccer is doing a better job of cutting down on this right now than the NHL is. I watch a lot of Premier League, and you know what happens when guys flop in the Premier League? They get the foul and they get a yellow card, and that's it. There's not even matching. It's the guy who flops gets penalized, and that's the only call.
Good,
And
it's about freaking time.
Right, and like the NHL could and should be doing that too. And they're not only are they not even calling both guys, they're just falling for the embellishment. Like they're just calling the penalty on the other team.
So the officials should be one of our downs this week. Well, before we get to the ups and downs, I guess, Scott, did you have any finishing remarks regarding Marchand in your opening take?
I don't think so. I mean, I think I covered most of it, but just that he is more than rising to the occasion as captain, leader, and once again, star player. Which, look, he had a good season last year. 21 goals, 67 points. It just wasn't vintage Marchand. And we know why. He talked all season about how he still didn't feel fully like himself after that double hip surgery. And he was saying that, like, even going into the playoffs. And, in a whole season of what ifs with how everything ended, you wonder how that season plays out, how that playoffs plays out if you have, like a fully recovered, year removed from hip surgery Marchand, because we're seeing that he still has it in the tank. It was just the hip that was kind of holding him back last year. And sometimes you wonder, like, look, he's in his mid-30s. It wouldn't be surprising enough at all if that was just what he is now. Maybe he's just a 60, 65 point guy for a couple of years, and then he drops down to a 50 point guy. That would be normal. That's what tends to happen as players get into their mid-30s, mid to late 30s. Instead, with Marchand, like, this is, to me, like, it's, you call it a bounce back season, but again, it's not like he was that down last year. I just think it's more of a statement season. It's like he's still capable of this, and he's capable of it without Bergeron as a center, which is just impressive. It's an impressive season that he's putting together.
Did you have a chance to mention earlier about him passing a certain somebody in Bruins lore?
Yeah, I mentioned that in the open.
Yeah,
passing Bork, but
yeah, impressive stuff. I mean, anytime you're passing Ray Bork on anything Bruins related, it's
he decided to make a joke about it the other day when he tied him and say Ray Bork was a defenseman. It's true. I'm up here, and he's like, "Well, that's a defenseman," and yeah. But then he was like, "No, I'm just kidding." Like, obviously, he's one of the best Bruins ever. So, yeah, he doesn't like to talk a lot about like individual accomplishments, which a lot of the guys don't. But he didn't really take a whole lot of time to talk about what it meant for himself, because the drill. It's all about the cups and the team, not the individual achievements. But obviously, like, we can talk about how impressive it is.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, it is funny when he puts it that way. Ray Bork was a defenseman, but still, I mean, yeah, I mean, he's just cementing himself as one of the greatest Bruins. I mean, there's no other way to describe it.
And one of the most clutch Bruins, because he now, with another overtime goal, he keeps moving up that list too. Like his overtime scoring has been key, and so he does it again. He finds a way to win. I think Jeremy Swayman only faced that one shot in the overtime, and so the Bruins do what they should have done in regulation and take 2 points away from Ottawa, who have not been doing great this season record wise. So it's a team that they needed to beat, but not that they're necessarily a bad team. But I know the Canadian media has been on top of them quite a bit, but
yeah, I mean, they've been playing a little bit better recently, and they've been scoring a bunch of goals. So
yeah, that's the crazy part about it, is that they are scoring, and their power play isn't bad. Like, I just don't really understand what's going on with them.
Well, they don't play any defense, and they don't have a goalie, so that's what's going on with them. But yeah, one other interesting note from overtime: David Pastrnak did not play in overtime. He was not on either of the top 2 3-on-3 units.
Yeah, because think back to what the breakdowns were the last few times they lost in overtime. Who was on the ice? I mean, I know we also talk about how he's on the ice to score, but like, if you're trying to really make a statement about, okay, this is something we are not doing in overtime, like you have to put the better puck managers, like the better situation managers in there. And Pastrnak obviously is your deadliest threat to score, but you kind of see maybe this is the new philosophy and how to not lose so many games in overtime.
Yeah, I think they've clearly placed more of an emphasis on possession and like actual defensive responsibility. Whereas, it's tempting 3-on-3, like, hey, just throw out your most talented players and tell them to go. And it's like, okay, but then if you don't score on your first chance, you're giving up a 2 or 3-on-1. So, yeah, they have gotten better. Like, I think the last couple times they've gone to overtime now, you've seen them value the puck. How many times did we come on here and talk about how, like, other teams will circle back and cycle and possess the puck for a minute straight, and then like the Bruins will get it, go 1-on-2 and turn it over in 12 seconds. And it's like,
or take a stupid shot and then that's it. Then they lose the puck.
Yeah, Jake DeBrusk that one game. Yeah, it's like, yes, maybe they just needed more practice time. Maybe it just hadn't been enough of a focus. It is such a specialty situation that you're obviously not practicing it as much as 5-on-5, as much as power play, penalty kill, 2-on-1 rush, 3-on-2 rush. Like, that's all the stuff that the Bruins really focus on in practice. But yes, that their overtime problems got bad enough that they clearly needed to like come back to the drawing board and figure out a different approach. And I think they have.
Well, yeah, think about if you go to overtime 10 times in the season and you lose most of them, like say you lose 7 or 8 of them, like you're missing out on 7 or 8 points towards the standing. And that's not an insignificant number. Like that means you're now having to work harder in the games later on down your schedule because you missed out on points earlier in the season that you should have at least had a better chance to hold on to some of them if you just, I don't know, if you had your overtime 3-on-3 stuff tied down earlier in the season. I understand why it's not practiced as much, but it definitely was a necessity for this team because otherwise you're just giving up points if you keep doing the same thing in overtime and having the same result. And it's also not great for the team, like in the locker room to have this keep happening to them. So you got to write it at some point.
Yeah, I think all good points. I feel like we should head over to the who's up, who's down, because my Wi-Fi is so shitty that I couldn't hear a word you guys were saying. And then in the last 10 seconds, you two sounded like Alvin and the Chipmunks and you were talking a million miles an hour. So I'm going to assume we were still talking about Brad Marchand and the Bruins overtime, success and David Pastrnak not being out there. But who's up, who's down? We have, Scott, I'll let you go over a couple of the downs, and Bridget too, because Shattenkirk's in there as one of your opening shift mentions as well.
Yeah, I guess we can start with the downs. Not many, because again, Bruins are in a stretch here where they've only lost 1 game recently. But it has been a quiet stretch from Matt Poitras, who now has gone 5 games without a point. And I don't think he's playing poorly, but he's been down on the 4th line. Minutes have been down around 8, 9, 10 minutes. And Montgomery basically said, like, he's going to have to, he's playing fine, but he's going to have to earn more ice time. And listen, it's not, I don't even think it is a problem. I know some people on Twitter, they get mad every time Matt Poitras ends up under 10 minutes. And, you get the whole, how's he supposed to develop if he's on the 4th line? He's only playing 8 minutes. And it's like, guess what? He's on a Stanley Cup contender. I'm sorry. He's not just going to be handed 14 minutes when the guys above him are playing well. Like, look at the Bruins' top 3 lines right now. Who are you moving off? Who's getting their minutes slashed? The team's playing well. And if Poitras has to contribute in a smaller role, then so be it. And And I think he is. Again, like I don't think he's playing poorly. I just think it would at some point you want to see him start to get back on the score sheet. So whether that requires, a bump up to maybe a more talented line, like say with Frederic and Geeky at some point, or if he just has to fight through and find a way to produce on a fourth line role in fourth line minutes. Look, other guys have put up some points on that fourth line. Danton Heinen was on the list on the fourth line when he got a hat trick. So, a down only because the points haven't been there, really.
Yeah, and down in the lineup a little bit as well from where he started the season to the fourth line now, and down in minutes a little bit. So yeah, I would agree with you on that. And then Shattenkirk, who we mentioned earlier, the problem with this is like I do really wish I had a little bit more information about the extent of an injury, if there even is one, because then that takes away the healthy scratch, like 100%, like, because healthy scratch is a pretty good indication that you're having a little bit of a down stretch, that at least in coach's eyes. But if it's not 100% healthy, then you're getting someone else in there. But I will say Weatherspoon has been playing well enough to keep his spot in the lineup, which means somebody else is getting pushed out now that Forbert's back. And obviously, more than likely, something we've said since the early parts of the season, the 6th and 7th defensemen on this team probably will cycle in and out. So both of them are going to be scratches at different points depending on matchups, and do you need a big guy or do you need someone who can move the puck better? So it's just kind of we're kind of just starting to see exactly where everybody lies in the depth chart. And then I wouldn't be surprised also if Forbert gets more rest time, because he had a really slow recovery. So I assume that, like, to try to preserve his health, there would be some rest built in for him. But yeah, Shattenkirk has to go on the down this particular week because of the scratches.
For ups, we do have Frederic, Coyle, Marchand. I think outside of David Pastrnak, I do think that those have been your three best forwards this year. I mean, obviously James Van Riemsdyk is up there in points as well, and there's an argument to be made for him. But if you're just talking about Frederic's overall development and importance in that, where he is in the lineup to create that depth in scoring, obviously Charlie Coyle has stepped up in a major way this year. We talked about Marchand a lot. So there's those three individuals, and then we also have Danton Heinen and Jacob Lauko, who I think had his first multi-game point streak of his career. His first goal of the season has come in the last few weeks as well. So wherever you guys want to pick up those pieces with those ups.
Yeah, well, with Lauko, mentioned it earlier, but he ends up out of the lineup Thursday night, which I'm assuming there's some sort of minor injury there. I'm assuming he's one of the guys Montgomery was talking about, needed to see in warmups. Because, he had been playing really well. 2 goals in his previous 3 games, 3-game point streak, grapes everywhere. So, yeah.
You and the grapes, man. Scott, so this comes because Scott asked him a question about the grapes in one of the, was it the last media availability that we get to talk to him? Scott just went right for the hard-hitting questions about the grapes. So
it was that was Wednesday or Tuesday practice or Wednesday pregame. I don't know. I forget. It all blends together, but
yes, it does. I have no idea what day it is, guys. But Scott, please explain to people who maybe don't understand the grape thing quickly, since you mentioned the grapes.
Lauko loves grapes. So the way he told it was like he always would eat fruit before games anyways.
That's not true. Donuts. There was donuts at one point.
He said in Czechia, like, the team would always have like a fruit spread. And then he got to Providence and they didn't really have that. So he started bringing his own fruit. And he said he tried a couple other fruits, but they were too messy. He ended up with sticky hands. So he ended up settling on grapes because they were easy to eat. They were clean. And he likes them. So
wait a minute. Hold on a second here, Scott. sticky hands. I mean, Bridges onto something. I mean, Mark Diver told us that Loco he preferred donuts in Providence. Maybe that's where the sticky hands came from. What fruit's giving you sticky hands?
Yeah, it's more like maple glazed donuts, or I hear those make your hands pretty sticky. But
Yeah,
no,
well, everybody knows a donut with strawberry frosting is a fruit.
Is a fruit. Yeah, that's a fruit. It counts.
Yeah.
No, well, when I first saw him, so if you watch like the video on Nesson of like the guys walking in, or you see them post on the Bruins Instagram like pictures of the guys walking in, look at what he's holding. He's almost always got a big full bag of grapes in his hand as he's walking in. I hope one time he just starts eating them as they're filming him or something. But my immediate thought was grapes are also full of sugar. So if you like, a nice sugary donut, like grapes, you look better. You're like, look at it, I'm eating fruit, but it's also just full of sugar. Like when I was on keto, that would be a no-go in terms of something that I definitely couldn't eat. So
yeah, well, hey, a little sugar before the games, nothing wrong with that. Helps get you up. But yeah,
Loves, what are you eating? I'm eating fruit, buddy. It's a caramel apple. Come on, it's a candy apple you're eating there.
Chocolate covered strawberries. Yeah.
Hey, no, those are good for you, Scott. What are you saying? Okay, those are perfectly healthy. But we totally took away from the point, which is that he's been playing better, so he can have as many grapes as he wants, and maybe we can even say, the grapes are part of the reason why he's doing better. But Scott, did you have anything else to say about how Lauco isn't up this week?
No, I'll throw Charlie Coyle out as another up. I think Brian mentioned him, but we haven't talked a ton about Coyle, but 2 more points for him Thursday night. And he played 21-30. I mean, that's a few games now recently. He's been up over 20 minutes. Like, again, just to kind of further the point that this is a guy who's playing like a legit number 1 center. He's putting up the points. He's playing the minutes. He's doing the job in all 3, 5-on-5, power play, penalty kill, and just, continues to just play at a really high level.
I mean, Pavel Zacha has 28 points and Coyle has 41. And going into the year, it was kind of, all right, which one of those guys will pull away as the number 1 center point production? And I think everybody thought Zacha had the higher ceiling offensively. And then, kudos to Coyle, because then, a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed 19-year-old came around and everybody started saying maybe Charlie Coyle goes back to third-line center, where he, if Charlie Coyle is your third-line center, your team's really deep. I was one of them. And since then, he is undisputedly, their best center this year, obviously, by far. And he's a true number 1 center for this team in this moment, and good for him for all of that. He deserves every accolade and compliment that he gets this year. I know there might be a little bit more to discuss with the Bruins, but we have to go shortly, and I did want to give Scott a chance to talk about a very exciting week of hockey for his alma mater, and what's going to kick off an exciting couple of weeks in college hockey.
Yeah, historic series for BU and BC this weekend. First time ever that they've met as the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country. BU number 1 going in, BC number 2.
Very surprising, by the way. I'm surprised to hear that based on their history.
Yeah, and I think so. I don't know exactly how long like the poll era counts. I don't think it goes all the ways back to like the 70s, because BU and BC did play in a national championship game in 1978. So I'm assuming if there were polls, they would have been 1 and 2 going into that game, you'd think. So, but anyways, yeah, regardless, historic. The last time they faced as even top 5 teams was 10 years ago, 2014. Last time they were both in the top 3 was 2012. So it's a great. It's only like the 26th time ever that there's been a 1-2 matchup. Only the second time with Hockey East teams, and both games are sold out. Friday night at BC at Connie Forum, Saturday at BU at Aganis. And Brian mentioned it being a couple of weeks. That's because they also play in the first round of the Beanpot on February 5th in just not even 2 weeks, a week and a half or whatever. So yeah, an incredible stretch of hockey for that rivalry. And tickets on the secondary market, the cheapest ones I was looking yesterday, are going for like $170, $180. I've never seen this kind of demand for a regular season college hockey game around
This is
here.
why I'm happy I don't have to pay for tickets. So it's because I'm working, so I can't just like sit down by the glass and have a beer like how I would love to watch a game like that at some point, because that's been a long time since I did that. But yeah, it's gonna be a good one. I want to bring this up because this is something that's been bothering me that I saw, and this isn't something BU did, so don't worry about it, Scott. But Ryan Leonard for BC just like screaming at Merrimack's goalie. What was that? Like, what even is that? He's going to get killed in the NHL if he does something like that.
Well, he's going to fight back in the NHL. He is a pest, and he is like, if you're a BU fan, by the end of this weekend, you're absolutely going to hate Ryan Leonard. I don't think I will, because I kind of love the edge that he has. Like, he showed it in World Juniors too.
He's going to eat like a goalie stick or something at some point in his career if he yells at the goalie, though. Like, come on. Like, I understand being a pest, but like you're a young, like, he just looks like a brat when he does that. I don't know. To me, like, you're young, you're like in a situation where you should be like paying your dues a little bit. I don't know.
I mean, I agree, but I also think he might just be like a borderline psycho. Like, if a goalie gives him a stick to the teeth, he seems like the kind of kid who would like be laughing through broken teeth and blood.
Are you trying to say he's like a Kachuk or something?
Yes.
He's like a Matt Kachuk.
That's exactly the kind of player he's going to be. And he's a Capital's first round pick. So he's going to go there and then learn from Tom Wilson and become that even more. Like,
so Scott, I apologize if you already laid it out completely, but after Friday night's game, which is at Agganis.
Friday's at Connie, Saturday Agganis.
Okay, so Friday's at BC, Saturday's at Agganis, and then that's the last. Those are the last two games they play each other until the Beanpot, or there's another home and home.
No, then it's the Beanpot, first round of the Beanpot.
Okay. Wow, cool. Yep, can't wait. So you're going to Agganis, Scott, on Saturday?
I'm going both nights. I will be there both nights.
Oh, nice.
But both games are on Nesson too. So anyone who doesn't want to pay $200 for tickets, you can watch at home.
Yes, watch Nesson Saturday the whole day, because I got the broadcast right before. So I'll be broadcasting the PWHL game at 4, and then right after that is the BCBU game. So
Bruins Flyers at 12:30. So you get.
I was just gonna say, yeah, wake up, go get your Dunkin' Donuts coffee and your your favorite diner food. I don't know. Go watch Bruins. Go watch.
And leave it tuned to Nesson for the whole day.
Go watch BU.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be scanning Nesson both nights for like somebody throwing popcorn at BC players, only to see that it's Scott with like a Michael Ruzioni jersey on. Boo! Boo! All right.
That's what he does when he's a fan. He usually has to keep it tame in the press box, but when he's a fan, he's an animal. So
that's what I do to Bridget in the press box.
That's not true. That's what I do to Scott.
What's the BU fan chant at the Beanpot? Like fuck them up, BC sucks, or something like that.
They've technically changed it to rough them up.
No,
not to make it PG, but I think there's still a lot of people who say fuck them up. So
you think?
I could just see I could just see like BU scoring a goal, and like you have the band in the top of the balcony at the Garden with their playing the music, and you see Scott about Scott's going crazy. He's like pounding his chest. Scott's got his shirt off, painted red with BU and white paint on his chest.
What? No, I'm not moonlighting as Sasquatch. That job's already taken at BU. It's been covered for a couple decades now.
All right. Well, I think that probably wraps it up. hope you all have a wonderful weekend and enjoy all the hockey as we just mentioned. And we will talk to you on Monday. Hey guys, thanks for watching this Skate podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.